The war room hummed with tension as the Galactic Alliance gathered for what might be their final decision. 27 species, each with their own logic and culture, filled the circular chamber orbiting Nexus Station. Holographic displays showed the steady advance of the Vex Dominion, a crimson tide of conquest that had already consumed 11 star systems in 6 months. Commander Zurich of the Menin species shifted his tricolored skin from diplomatic blue to anxious yellow as he reviewed their options. The Alliance's standard defensive protocols had failed spectacularly. Their predictable formations, their time-tested strategies, their carefully calculated risk assessments, all had been turned against them by the Vex ever-adapting tactics. "We have exhausted all conventional options," announced First Counselor Thelmorn, her crystalline voice cutting through the murmuring translation fields. "The Vex Dominion has analyzed and countered every defensive strategy in our military archives. We require unconventional thinking." A pause stretched across the chamber. Then, almost as an afterthought, someone suggested the unthinkable. "What about the humans?" The room erupted. The Polaran ambassador literally glowed with indignation. "The newest members? They've been in the Alliance for barely a decade. They still drink fermented plant extracts for recreational purposes. But desperation breeds consideration of the desperate. After heated debate, the vote passed barely. The humans would be invited to discuss their military capabilities. Many counselors marked it as a gesture of last resort, a formality before the inevitable negotiation of surrender terms. Captain Alexander Reeves stood before the assembly the next day, his crisp uniform a stark contrast to the exotic attire of his alien audience. His crew flanked him. Commander Diane Wells, analytical and precise. Lieutenant Obinosi, a tactician with an engineer's curiosity, and several others who would soon write themselves into the Alliance's military history. "Distinguished representatives," Alex began, his voice steady despite the weight of thousands of years of more advanced civilization judging him. "We understand your hesitation. Humans are the youngest species here, yes. But we bring something you might be missing, a certain unpredictability in warfare." Commander Zurich's skin flickered to skeptical orange. "Unpredictability? In military strategy? That's the opposite of what wins wars." Alex smiled, a peculiarly human expression that many species found difficult to interpret. "With respect, Commander, that's exactly why the Vex are winning. They predicted every move you'll make because you've optimized for predictability. They're fighting an algorithm, not an enemy." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees at this challenge to their established doctrines. But desperation, that universal motivator, gave Alex's words weight they might not otherwise have carried. Diane stepped forward with a datapad. "Our species has a saying, all warfare is based on deception. We don't just study battle patterns, we study the psychology of conflict. The Vex, for all their adaptation capabilities, haven't encountered truly creative chaos before." "You speak of chaos as if it were a strategy," Thelmorn observed. "Controlled chaos," Obi interjected excitedly. "The Vex operate on perfect information exchange and optimal decision-making. But human military history shows that introducing unpredictable elements, what we call fog of war, can completely disrupt superior forces." The Alliance representatives exchanged glances through various sensory organs. The Galactic Standard Translation field crackled as they debated in their native languages. Finally, Counselor Vectarn of the silicon-based Thel spoke. "We will grant you a trial. One battle. If your chaotic methods yield results, we will consider expanded cooperation." Thus began humanity's first real test in the galactic arena. Not as the junior partners they had been for a decade, but as potentially the last hope against the Vex Dominion. The next morning, Alex stood in the war room poring over Vex battle data. The enemy fought with mathematical precision, perfect formations, optimal weapon deployments, and always they targeted the strongest defensive positions first. Standard doctrine dictated eliminating the enemy's strongest points to create cascading failures. "That's their mistake," Alex muttered, circling key patterns in the holographic display. "Sir," Diane questioned, coffee in hand, another human habit that fascinated and disturbed their alien allies. They're too perfect. Watch this pattern. Whenever they encounter a fortified position, they immediately focus fire to overwhelm it. Every single time. They're not adaptable. They're reactive within a perfect framework. The first battle came sooner than expected. The Vex pushed toward the mining system of Kresh 7, a strategic resource hub defended by a multinational alliance fleet. Alex took command of the human contingent, 3 cruisers and their support craft, alongside the main alliance battle fleet. "Attention all ships," Alex broadcast, his voice reaching across space. "Operation Confusion is a go. All units, execute random maneuvers. Do not, I repeat, do not follow standard defensive patterns." The Alliance commanders watched in horror as human ships broke formation, executing seemingly random flight paths. Some engaged in wild spinning maneuvers, others fired sporadically at empty space, and a few simply stopped moving altogether in strategic positions. "What madness is this?" Zurich demanded, his skin blazing hot red with rage. "Watch their response," Alex replied calmly. The Vex fleet, as predicted, analyzed the chaos and identified what they perceived as weak points in the defense. They concentrated fire on the disabled human ships, but these were equipped with specialized shield dampeners that absorbed and redistributed energy rather than deflecting it outright, technology the Vex hadn't encountered before. More importantly, the Vex perfect targeting algorithms wasted significant resources trying to predict trajectories on ships moving erratically. Their signature efficiency dropped from 97% to 68%. Meanwhile, as the Vex focused on the human chaos, the main Alliance fleet struck from unexpected angles. For the first time in months, they achieved tactical surprise. The Vex retreat was orderly, calculated, but it was a retreat nonetheless. The command center erupted in cautious celebration. Species that had barely exchanged diplomatic pleasantries now congratulated each other in a dozen languages. But Alex knew this was just the beginning. Over the following weeks, humanity's unconventional tactics became both the Alliance's greatest asset and greatest controversy. Alex introduced concepts the Alliance had never considered: disinformation campaigns, deliberate sacrifices for psychological effect, and the deployment of expendable drones that existed purely to confuse enemy sensors. Each victory, however, came with a cost. The Alliance military, built on centuries of honor codes and algorithmic precision, struggled to accept the human approach. Internal conflicts arose as some species questioned whether defeating the Vex was worth abandoning their principles. "You treat war like a game," accused General Korth Prime of the Polarin during one heated strategy session. "You sacrifice ships and crew as if they were mere pieces on a board." Alex's face hardened. "We treat war like exactly what it is, a struggle for survival where the gloves must come off. Every tactical decision I make weighs heavily on me, but I'd rather carry that weight than watch our species get absorbed into the Vex collective." The tension between human tactics and Alliance principles reached a critical point when intelligence revealed the Vex ultimate plan: construction of a massive quantum gate that could transport their full armada directly to the Alliance capital system. The discovery came during a daring reconnaissance mission. Alex, Obi, and a small crew infiltrated Vex-controlled space using a prototype stealth ship call-signed Phantom. The mission nearly ended in disaster when Vex patrols detected their presence. "They're adapting to our stealth technology," Obi warned, fingers flying over the sensor console as proximity alarm screamed. "Then we adapt faster," Alex growled. He ordered the deployment of a fake AI beacon, a decoy device that broadcast signatures resembling multiple ships. The Vex, in their perfect logical response, split their pursuit forces. The escape was by the narrowest of margins, but the intelligence they returned with was invaluable and terrifying. The quantum gate was nearly complete, protected by defensive installations that made previous Vex fortifications look like children's toys. "We must negotiate," insisted several council members when the findings were presented. "This level of technology, we cannot compete." "We don't compete," Alex countered. We win by changing the rules of the competition. He unveiled Operation Trojan, a plan so audacious it sparked fierce debate. They would create a fleet of ships modified to appear as prime targets, equipped with minimal crew but maximum sensor signatures. This armada would engage the Vex forces head-on, appearing to be the Alliance's final, desperate push. Meanwhile, a small team would infiltrate the Quantum Gate facility using the chaos as cover. Their mission: sabotage the integration points where Vex technology interfaced with repurposed Alliance tech in the gate's construction. "This is suicide," Captain Verna of the Thel species declared. "You're asking crew members to fly to their deaths as a diversion." "I'm asking volunteers," Alex clarified. "Every pilot will have escape pods programmed with micro-jump capabilities. High risk, yes, but not suicide." The debate raged for days. Human determination met alien caution in every session. Finally, with Vex forces advancing daily toward the gate's completion, the Alliance voted to approve the operation. The margin was thin, and the divisions it revealed would likely scar the Alliance for years to come. Zurich, his skin now displaying complex patterns of respect and concern, approached Alex privately. "I understand now why humans might evolve to think this way. Your species survived constant warfare on a single planet. You learned to embrace chaos because order meant death. We learned," Alex replied slowly, "that survival often requires making impossible choices. The difference is what you do with that knowledge afterward." The day of Operation Trojan arrived too quickly. The modified fleet, 70 ships that looked like warships but flew like ghosts of their intended purpose, jumped to the gate's position. Alex commanded the strike team. Himself, Diane, Obi, and surprisingly, Zurich himself. "My people have always valued calculated risk," the Menin commander explained, his skin cycling through colors Alex had never seen. "I believe I am beginning to understand your mathematics of the impossible." The diversionary fleet performed brilliantly, though at a terrible cost. Ships equipped with AI mimicking crew signatures drew Vex fire. Automated systems maintained realistic power fluctuations, and escape pods jettisoned at random intervals to simulate battle damage. Through this orchestrated chaos, Alex's strike team infiltrated the Quantum Gate facility. The structure was magnificent, a ring of dark matter stabilizers surrounded by a lattice of quantum processors, all humming with barely contained power. The interface points, Obi whispered, his portable scanner painting holographic highlights on the alien architecture. "They've integrated our shield harmonics directly into their power distribution system. The sabotage had to be precise. Too much damage would shut down the gate harmlessly. Too little would merely slow its activation. They had one chance to create a cascade failure that would destroy it beyond any possibility of quick repair." The infiltration was not without discovery. Vex security constructs, geometric shapes that defied conventional physics, detected their presence. The facility's sterile corridors became a battlefield as the team fought their way to the critical systems. Diane took point, her expertise in Alliance systems crucial to their navigation. Zurich provided covering fire with precision that impressed even the humans. Obi, meanwhile, worked feverishly to understand the Vex Alliance tech integration, searching for the perfect pressure point. "Found it," he called out over the sound of plasma fire. "They're using our own gravitational pulse technology to stabilize their space-time manipulation. If we reverse the harmonic frequency at these 7 points simultaneously..." Alex didn't hesitate. "Set the charges. We'll hold here." The next minutes felt like hours. Plasma and projectile weapons filled the air as they defended Obi's position. Their combat suits were rated for high-energy combat, but repeated hits were taking their toll. Diane sustained a burn to her leg. Alex took a glancing hit that overloaded his suit's power system. Zurich's more advanced armor kept him operational, but his skin had locked into combat black, a sign of severe stress in his species. "Charges set," Obi announced. 30-second countdown initiated. They fought their way to their insertion ship, each second stretching endlessly. The facility's automated defenses had activated, turning the environment itself into an enemy. Gravity flux fields pulled at their bodies, electromagnetic interference disrupted their suit systems, and still the Vex security constructs kept coming. The blast, when it came, exceeded all projections. The quantum gate didn't simply fail, it suffered a catastrophic cascade failure that propagated through every Vex facility within a light-minute radius. The visual effect, captured by long-range sensors, showed space-time itself seeming to ripple and tear before settling back into its normal state. The Vex fleet, suddenly without their strategic advantage and their perfect coordination disrupted by the quantum interference, found themselves on the defensive for the first time. The Alliance forces, no longer bound to defending against a perfect enemy, pressed their advantage. The war was far from over, but the tide had turned. The Vex, now facing an enemy that refused to play by the rules they had mastered, were forced to adapt in ways that diminished their perfect efficiency. In the aftermath, as wounded were tended and losses were counted, the Alliance held its breath to see how this unprecedented victory would reshape their union. The debates that followed were as fierce as any battle, with some species calling for a complete overhaul of their military doctrine, while others advocated for a return to proper warfare once the immediate crisis passed. Alex, exhausted and bearing the scars of leadership, stood before the council one final time in the immediate aftermath. We have shown that adaptability and creative thinking can overcome even the most perfect enemy. But we must not forget, we did this together. Human chaos balanced by Alliance order. This is not about right and wrong tactics. It's about finding what works when everything else has failed. Zurich, his skin displaying the warm colors of friendship and respect, added, "Captain Reeves speaks truth." The Vex were predictable precisely because they had perfected warfare against predictable enemies. They could not comprehend, let alone counter, the fusion of our approaches. The Alliance began to reshape itself gradually. Human veterans started training programs that combined chaos theory with traditional Alliance strategy. In return, humans learned the value of precise planning and ethical considerations in warfare that they had sometimes overlooked in their survival-focused history. The Vex, while beaten back, were not destroyed. They retreated to their core worlds, no doubt analyzing what had happened and planning their adaptation. But they were no longer the unstoppable force that had threatened to devour the galaxy. In quiet moments, Alex often reflected on the cost of their victory. Ships and their automated systems could be replaced. The political and philosophical divisions within the Alliance would take far longer to heal. Some species never fully accepted the human approach, keeping detailed records of every life lost to what they termed reckless human tactics. Yet others, like Zurich and his men and people, embraced the lessons learned. They worked to find the balance point between logical perfection and creative chaos, understanding that both had their place in the new reality they faced. The Quantum Gate project had been just that, a project. Intelligence suggested the Vex had multiple contingency plans, other massive endeavors to tilt the balance back in their favor. The Alliance now knew they couldn't simply return to their old ways. They had to evolve, to become something new, a synthesis of all their strengths. 6 months after Operation Trojan, a ceremony was held to officially integrate human combat doctrine into the Alliance military code. Alex stood next to warriors from 26 other species as they acknowledged humanity's contribution to their mutual survival. "We came to you as a last resort," Thelmorn announced, her crystalline voice carrying across the vast assembly. "You showed us that when all conventional paths lead to defeat, the unconventional path becomes not just valid, but necessary." The speech continued, full of diplomatic phrases and careful acknowledgments. But Alex's mind wandered to the future. The Vex would adapt, that was certain. They wouldn't make the same mistakes twice. But neither would the Alliance. They had learned that doctrine must serve strategy, not the reverse. That ethics could be maintained even in chaos. That sometimes the most logical approach was to appear illogical. As the ceremony concluded, Diane found him staring at the holographic star map in the command center. "Thinking about what comes next?" she asked. Always, he replied. The Vex aren't the type to accept defeat. They'll come back, probably with counters to everything we did. Then we'll counter their counters, she said with a slight smile. That's what we do best, right? Adapt and overcome. We'll have to adapt faster than before, Alex mused. They've never had to deal with truly unpredictable enemies. Now, they have data on us. They'll be studying human psychology, military history, cultural patterns. Obi joined them, having overheard. Then we'll have to become unpredictable to ourselves. Evolution in real time. Warfare is art, not just science. Alex nodded slowly. The next phase of this cosmic conflict would be one of intelligence, counterintelligence, and psychological warfare on a scale never before seen. The Alliance now had the tools and the mindset to face it, but victory was far from guaranteed. Meeting in 10, he announced, his captain's voice carrying that edge of command that had become second nature. We need to start planning for Vex counter-adaptations. I want scenarios covering everything from complete tactical overhaul to them developing true chaos-resistant systems. As his team moved to comply, Alex took one last moment to appreciate the view from Nexus Station. Stars that represented thousands of cultures, billions of individuals, all relying on the Alliance to protect them from assimilation into the Vex collective consciousness. The humans had proven their worth as warriors. Now came the harder part, maintaining that edge while finding a sustainable future for everyone. Because defeating the Vex was just the first step. The real challenge would be building a lasting peace in its aftermath. The holographic display shifted, showing the latest intelligence updates. Vex movements suggested reorganization, possibly the development of new strategies. The Alliance would meet these challenges with their newfound understanding. That perfection in warfare was a trap, and that the alliance of logic and chaos could overcome even the most adapted enemy. Alex allowed himself a small smile. They had not just won a battle, or even a campaign. They had changed the fundamental nature of conflict in their part of the galaxy. And they would need every bit of that new perspective for what was surely coming. The lights dimmed in the observation deck as the system's sun set, marking the end of one chapter and the uncertain beginning of another. Humanity had earned their place at the table. Now, they had to help the entire Alliance navigate the new reality they had helped create. Standing in that moment between past victories and future challenges, Alex knew one thing with certainty. The Vex had called humanity a last resort. The galaxy was about to learn what happens when desperation meets human ingenuity, when last resorts become first principles, and when the rules of war are rewritten by those who survive them. The quantum gate had been destroyed, but in its destruction, it had birthed something new, an alliance that understood that in the face of perfect enemies, imperfect allies might be the only hope for survival. And sometimes, the greatest victories come not from defeating your opponents at their own game, but from changing the game entirely. As the lights of Nexus Station twinkled against the stellar backdrop, the command center began filling up again. Strategy sessions didn't pause for philosophical reflection. The war continued, but now the Alliance fought with new purpose, new tactics, and new hope. They had been given a second chance. The Vex had underestimated the power of alliance between ordered species and this chaotic newcomer. They wouldn't make that mistake again. But neither would the Alliance. A soft tone announced incoming communications from the frontier. Vex activity. They were already adapting, trying new approaches. Alex heard his people gathering, checking equipment, analyzing data patterns. The war continued its eternal dance, but now both sides had learned to change their steps. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility and the lightness of newfound confidence. They had rewritten the rules of war not through superior technology or greater numbers, but through the simple recognition that rigidity in the face of change was the path to extinction. Captain, Zurich approached, his skin displaying patterns of determination and anticipation. New tactical proposals ready for review. The Vex are testing new formation patterns, possibly accounting for our chaos tactics. Good, Alex responded, surprising even himself with the eagerness in his voice. Let's see what they've learned. And more importantly, Let's show them we haven't stopped learning either. They moved together toward the strategic center, where beings from across the galaxy would once again struggle to balance truth and deception, order and chaos, tradition and innovation. The great game continued, but with players who had been fundamentally changed by their experience. The stars watched silently, witnesses to this evolution in warfare. In their ancient light, the Alliance had found not just a way to fight, but a new way to be. And that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all. The war against the Vex was far from over. But for the first time since the invasion began, the defenders of the galaxy looked forward to tomorrow with confidence rather than fear. They had become something new, a fusion of the best aspects of all their species, prepared to face whatever came next. In the command center, screens lit up with new intelligence, new threats, new opportunities. Alex Reeves, the human captain who had taught the galaxy to wage war differently, prepared to lead them into the next phase of their greatest challenge. The last resort had become the first choice, and the galaxy would never be the same.